Maybe about 10 minutes later, I heard this big thud noise. So I jump up, and as I jump up, I see my dad standing in the doorway. But before I can say anything, her husband had already put a deer slug through my dad's stomach.
Oh, wow. On June 27th, 1993, in Muncie, Indiana, a man is shot in the early morning hours. His daughter says she saw everything. His family say the story was never told right. And what happened that night depends on who you ask. I am Darius Nefarious, and this is the Darkside of Muncie. So this episode contains discussions of violence and trauma that may be disturbing to some viewers. This story is based on archived reportings from the Star Press and the Muncie Evening Press, along with interviews conducted with family members. Some portions of this episode reflect personal recollections and opinions, and during these interviews may not be represented as official findings. All individuals mentioned are presumed innocent unless proven guilty in the court of law. This episode is told to honor the life of Elbert Pennington. All right, before we get into tonight's episode, I want to thank our first ever local sponsor here in Muncie, Your Mom's Bells Bonds. So I spoke with Luke, myself. We had plans to meet up. He's a real cool, laid-back guy. If you ever have to deal with that kind of situation, you know how speed and reliability matters. From everything I heard and after speaking with him, to me, he's one of the best bail bondsmen in Muncie. And I was someone who, dealt with the law plenty of times. I done worked with other bail bondsmen here in Muncie. But if you want somebody with speed, somebody who's fast, who really care and work with you, I would recommend Luke Medlin. All right, now back to the story. Before Elbert Pennington became a case, before his death got reduced to a ruling, before people argued about what happened that night, there was a man, a father, a brother, a city worker, a man people still remembers, a man people still love. Elbert P. Jim Pennington was 38 years old when he died. He had spent most of his life in Muncie. He worked for the city sanitation department, and he also did roofing work. His obituary showed a man rooted in family, work, and community. But the papers only give the outline. His family give you who he was as a person. Okay, so me and Barbie McCain, that is Jim's daughter. We conducted an interview. It was very powerful, very heartfelt. And I made a story off of that. But then I got contacted by his sister, which was Barb Classville. And we met up. This is my first in-person interview. I really didn't do those. It was all over the phone. So we both was nervous. Let me start there. And then my laptop wasn't working, so my audio was kind of off of my iPhone, but I could kind of hear what we was talking about, and I remember it because I was there. But it might mess up the whole structure because I had made a script already off Barbie interview. Then I try to incorporate the scripts together, well, from what I heard with Barb, his sister. And it just didn't come out right. So I want to figure out a way where I can get the actual audio interviews out, because I don't really post the audio in. This is my first time even using it in the beginning. But anyway, let's get to the story. So before we get started on the night that it happened, we got to focus on who Jim Pennington was. So Elbert P. Jim Pennington. Some people call him Jim. His family call him Boots. He was 38 years old when he died. He spent most of his life in Muncie. He worked for the city sanitation department, and he also did roofing work. His obituary showed a man who was rooted in family, work, and community. But the paper don't give you the outline. His family give you who he was as a person. His sister Barb, she described him as a big brother, funny, hardworking, protective. Somebody who took care of his family. And when people speak on the dead, it's not dramatic at all. It's usually just small and simple and ordinary. Barb remember him telling her how proud he was when she got her first job. And that stuck with her. not because it was flashy, but because that was him, a brother who say things to motivate. His daughter described him as a dad first, not the man from the reports, not the man whose name was tied in the self-defense ruling. She said he loved her and that he got up every day and took it to the max for his family. That line matters because that's not the language of the court document. That's language of somebody who loved him. She remembered him taking her to the mall for the first time. He had never really been himself. Well, something beautiful about that memory was that it was a father and daughter both figuring out, walking around, shopping, making a day out something ordinary. And in her mind, that was one of her best memories of him. That kind of detail tell you who somebody was. Not because it proved anything in court, but because it proved he existed. More than the worst thing that happened to him. So months before his death, a woman wrote in the Muncie Evening Press describing him after he lost his job for the city. She said Elbert and Connie brought her food while she was recovering from a car accident. And they helped her keep things going. They showed compassion when she was vulnerable. She called him the backbone behind the compassion and the kindness. Barb said when she was getting married, she said Jim spoke. And he looked at her husband. And he said, if anything happened to her, you had to answer to me. And she said she remember going, oh my God, he probably don't want to marry me now. But it just showed what type of person he was. And another story, when I was conducting the interview, Tammy, his younger sister, said one day she came home from school. She was crying because they was making fun of her because she had the nicest clothes. He said Jim asked what was wrong. And then he went and got her a bunch of new clothes. So he was a big brother, a very protective brother. No matter what, you knew you could always call him Jim. And I don't mean he's perfect, but it does mean that he mattered. If you want to tell the story the right way, you got to start there. So about a month earlier, his younger brother, Henry Thomas Hensley, was killed in a car accident involving a semi-tractor trailer. He was only 19 years old. Reports say the car crossed to the center line and collided with the truck in Henry County, and he died on the scene. He was described as a man who was planning to enter the Navy. He was only 19 years old. And Barbie said she remembers seeing her father sitting on the edge of the bed, listening to Bob Sager Against the Wind. He was crying over Henry, not holding it together, just hiding out, just broken open by grief. And she remembered going to him and putting her arms around him and telling him she loved him. That moment stayed with her after all these years. Because as she explained it, that was one of the last times she remembers telling him that. So Barbie, she described her childhood being pretty much normal before the incident. And she spoke on how her grandparents stayed next door to them, so they was always with cousins, family lived around in the same area. So it was pretty normal for what she could remember. But she always said that Jim, her father, and her mother, Connie, they were getting like a little back and forth situations. Sometimes they'll be cool, sometimes they'll be into it. And it was always like a tit for tat. And she described Connie as playing mind games with him. But besides all that, the daughter talked about how her mother's mental health struggles. And she described how her mother, even though she had loving parents, she always ended in and out of psych units. And for a short time, when she went to a Ball Memorial Psych unit, she met somebody and they got married soon after. But at that time, She was just a child. She was just watching, listening, and soaking everything in. So the official version, according to Muncie Evening Press, Elbert was shot in the early morning hours of June 27, 1993, inside the North Wolf Street home of his girlfriend, Connie Griffin, and her new husband, John Griffin. The newspaper said there had been prior tension before that. Connie had reportedly obtained a restraining order, and that the police were still checking into that status. The same article reported that Elbert has been shot in the house earlier, and that police had been called once already, and that witnesses later said he came back and kicked over a motorcycle and entered the home and kept approaching before John Griffin fired the 12-gauge shotgun once in his abdomen. Elbert later died during surgery at Ball Memorial Hospital. That's the official frame most people got. And for the public, that may have sounded enough to explain what happened. But for the people who loved him, that version never answered the question that mattered most. Because the daughter say she was inside the home. And Barb say what happened afterwards never sat right with her. This is where the story changes. So what his daughter described happened that night, he said before that happened, it was an altercation between her father and the husband, Fran. She said she remembered her mom passing him a knife. The police get called. That incident wound up dispersing. Everybody go their separate ways. She said while she was sleeping, she just remembered hearing a loud thud. She said she jumped up, and when she did, she saw her father standing in the doorway. Before she could even say anything, she said her mother's husband had already put a deer slug through her father's stomach. That is her memory. That is how she carried it after all these years. She also described something else. She said that always stayed with her. She said the man who was involved in the earlier altercation with her father, after he was shot, he began kicking him. And she remembers screaming, asking him to stop because he can't get up. And then in one of the darkest details of that whole interview, she said they left her in the home alone with her father. A child, alone in that moment. A father dying on the floor. And adults leaving. Even if people remember every detail differently, that is what happened in her own details. That is how she lived it. Okay, so while one child was left inside that house, another part of the family had no idea what had just happened. Elbert's sister, Barb Claspell, remembered that night differently. She said it'd been so long, so some details faded, but one thing never did: the phone call. She remembered it coming in around 3:15, maybe 3:30 in the morning. And on that call, she was told her brother has been shot. She said she rushed to the hospital, and like so many families in that moment, she found herself standing in the hallway, waiting, not knowing, not understanding. She said about 20 minutes went by, and then they came out and told her he didn't make it. That's when Barb found out her brother was gone. So after that night, after the hospital, after the funeral, questions didn't stop. Because on paper, the case was ruled self-defense. But for Barb, that never felt right. She did not believe the case was handled correctly at all. She talked about how the investigation felt incomplete, how people was not fully questioned, and how things moved too fast. And one question kept coming back. She said, how could it be self-defense if he was already ready with a shotgun? And she felt as if her brother had been set up. That's her words, not mine. She explained it like this: if you call a father and tell him something that's happening to his daughter, he is going to come, no hesitation. And in her mind, that's exactly what happened. Barbie also said something around that same way, saying that someone told her that her father was contacted by Connie and saying that something was going on with his daughter, so he came. Basically, they both got the same story. He was contacted to come there, and he ended up dying that night. According to Barb, her brother did not have a weapon, and for his daughter, like that. So for his daughter, the trauma didn't stop that night. In fact, it got more complicated. She said before her father was even buried, she was already being asked to sign paperwork, insurance papers, documents tied to money, something she called PERF. Well, something that was called PERF. When I looked it up, it was Public Employee Retirement Fund. Something similar to 401k now, but for city workers. And that money was supposed to be tied to her, but she was a child at the time. She said she didn't fully understand what she was signing, just that her name was being used. And later, when she got older, she started realizing what those papers actually was. She even talked about a moment when her brother opened a FedEx letter. Inside that letter was an insurance payout with her name on it, but she said she never even seen it. That moment stayed with her because it made her question everything. His sister Barb described the grief differently. She said her mother passed away when they was young, and then just weeks before that was her brother, who was 19 years old, and he was killed in a semi-truck accident. And then only weeks before Jim's death was their younger brother. She said it herself. That's not something you move on from. Those kind of losses changes families forever. When his daughter talks now, she doesn't talk with anger. She says she's not angry no more. But that doesn't mean she got her answers. She said there's nothing she can do about it now. But one thing she made clear, people need to understand. Her father was more than what people say. She said they was rumors. People talked. But she said don't judge everything you hear. Because at the end of the day, her father, he loved her. He showed up. He worked. And he tried. And that matters. Today, the man who was shot, that reality never fully go away. Not for her, not for Barb, not for the family. Now, at the end of the story, we all come back to one thing. A man who was loved, a father, a brother, a person. If you have a candle, light it. If you don't, drop a candle in the comments. Because now, we say his name. Elbert Jim Pennington. Why this story mattered to me? So, like I always say, which I really do mean, every story I cover matters, especially when I speak with the families. But this story matters to me because I'm a father myself. And you never know how soon everything can just get taken from you. And another reason why this story really matters is because Barbie was there in the house. And she was young, so I doubt the police even talked to her about what happened. And I wish that if they did actually investigate that, it probably could have changed the outcome. But maybe it wouldn't. But it's just something that they should talk to everyone. And I've been close with Mason, which is Jim's grandson. And for the last couple of years, so this isn't something I read about. This is something that the family told me about before. And when you know people behind the story, you understand something different. These stories don't end. They live on in families, in memories, and in unanswered questions. And every story I tell is about somebody who mattered to somebody. And Elbert Pennington mattered. This is the Dark Side of Muncie, and I'm Darius Nefarious.